I'm Natalia Lobach, and this is Change Course. Why every change leader needs a coach. I talk to a lot of change leaders, and a lot of the time, it's someone's first time leading a big change. I'm seeing this more and more and more these days. Previously, what used to happen was if an organization needed a transformation or a change to happen, they would bring in a specialist. They would find a specialist leader who does transformation. And that person would come in, they would lead the transformation in that organization, probably stay there 2 to 3 years, depending on the scope and the size of the change, and then they would move on to their next gig. And that really was the life cycle of transformation leadership. That's how you kind of did it. But there's a change that has happened, and now leadership and governance, boards, all of the above, expect leaders to have change skills as part of their existing toolkit. And more often, what I'm hearing from leaders and what I'm seeing happening in the industry is that leaders are being asked to lead change even if they have never done it before. So what does this mean for you? Well, if you're a leader, then you've got a great opportunity in front of you. If you haven't already been asked to lead a big change, I can bet you $10 that you will be in the next year, maybe 2. Things in our society, in our culture, in our workplaces are changing incredibly rapidly. It feels like the pace of life and the pace of business has really accelerated since we had the big reset in 2020. And, through our time of plague, if we can call it that, there were so many things that happened. We were expected to step up and lead crisis. We were expected to effectively navigate multiple crises that happened. Every leader that I talked to during that period was not just dealing with the results of the plague. They were dealing with multiple crises. And you name it, it happened. There were a number of natural disasters that occurred during that time. If you remember, that affected a number of leaders that I was working with at the time. There were also a number of major workplace seismic changes that occurred as well. Not just this whole work from home stuff. It was beyond that. There were a bunch of other things that were going on. So what I've noticed is that leaders are more often being called in to step in and lead change. And now that we've all kind of been through this, the expectations are higher. So this is where I have heard from, and I've been working with a number of leaders who are amazing operations leaders. They're amazing resource managers. They are amazing at making things happen in the environments that they're in. They're incredibly strong at pulling organizations forward, ensuring and incentivizing and producing high performance, building high performing teams. A number of them are really good at culture, but change is that next journey. Change is the big unknown. Change is where we're going. So I've heard from these folks that they've now been asked to step in and lead mergers, acquisitions, org transformations, tech adoptions, you name it. And this is not like the CIO, the chief information officer, the chief technology officer being asked to lead a tech transformation. These are operations leaders. So this is no longer the domain of HR. This is no longer sitting in either your technology executive's office, your people executive's office, or your CEO's office. You are now seeing change become an essential skill for operations leaders and for leaders who have revenue generation underneath their portfolio. You can't just shrug it off and pass it off to HR. That isn't going to fly anymore. You've got to be able to do change. So what does this mean? Well, one of the things that I've encouraged a number of new change leaders to do is to seek out some help with this. And self-promotion aside, of course, if you haven't checked out connectedchange.com yet, definitely do that. We're building a huge resource for change leaders, for people who want to lead change. You might not want to become a change manager. You might not want to get certified and do change for the rest of your life, but you definitely have been asked to lead change in your current role and you need some help. So that's what Connected Change is going to be about. I mean, there's going to be a number of other resources there too for people who are deep into change like I am. But if you're a leader and you just need a little bit of help trying to figure this out, Connected Change is, I think, a fantastic place to go. One of the things that you really need to think about is, how do you approach and manage change yourself? And that is the first essential step that you need to take in order to figure out how you're going to lead others. How do you yourself approach and move through change? The most effective way to work through this is not to start up a meditation practice and sit with yourself for 30 minutes a day. I mean, I do recommend that. It's absolutely life-changing, but it doesn't always help you work through change. Often, the way that we work through these types of challenges, these types of problems, and also do that exercise of self-reflection is by being challenged to do that. One of the most fabulous models that is available today, and there are many people in this space who can help, is coaching. Honestly, I think that every change leader, every new change leader who has not done this before should invest in a coach or some coaching. I'm not saying, hire the most expensive person out there and, do that. There are a number of people in this space who can really help you delve into your own coping mechanisms, your own approaches. What kind of things trigger emotional responses in you? The only way you're going to understand and empathize with the people you're leading having emotional responses to change is to understand your own emotional response to change. And trust me, you might be like, I am not emotional. Everyone's emotional. It's part of the human condition. We all have emotional responses to change. The best way for you to become a good change leader is to go inward and tackle those things about you that make change hard. Where do you resist change? Where are your points of resistance and how can you overcome them? When you're out in front of other people, how can you talk to them about resistance? How can you create an authentic experience? So much about building trust as a change leader is about empathy. It's about understanding. It's about building that trust that people know you've been through it, that you understand how they feel, that you know when it's going to get hard, that you're going to be able to make it through, you're going to be able to help them, and that you've had your own experiences and understand what they're going through. Seriously, the only way to do that is by doing the hard work yourself before, or maybe at the same time as you're trying to lead change in your organization or in your community. So work through your own points of resistance. What triggers you? What makes you angry? What makes you excited? What makes you sad? What are you afraid of? Delving into fear is one of the hardest things to do in change. We wrestle with fear. If we're being challenged, if we're trying to figure out how to make change happen and make change stick, so much of our resistance comes from fear, and understanding how fear works, where fear comes from, and how to overcome it in our own lives is one of the key tools that you'll need to work through as a change leader. This stuff is really hard to do by yourself. Some people can. If you have a practice, if you've cultivated a practice of self-reflection, of self-awareness, of identifying and facing your fears, of identifying and facing your own triggers and challenges, then sure, yeah, you can probably do it on your own. But I would suggest that working through it with another person is really, really valuable. I love the coaching space for this because coaching isn't therapy. Therapy is something very different. That's really working with emotions and mental health and responses to things. I personally have been at different points in my life and for different reasons. I have worked with different therapists, hugely healing, hugely impactful experiences, but it works more on fairly specific things. For me, it was around relationships and then also around anxiety and how was anxiety happening? What kind of triggers did I have and how is that showing up in my own life, and how could I address and prevent myself from having very adverse anxiety events, which were debilitating, I might add. But this was not something a coach could help me with. This was definitely a therapist. So absolutely, if you like that approach, that's one way you can do it. I would say though, that depending on the type of person you work with and depending on the type of therapy that you're in, often you have to invite the therapist or invite the person to challenge you. And in this type of role, taking on that change leadership role, taking on that change leadership scope, you really need somebody to step up and challenge you and to invite you to think differently, to invite you to face those fears. And a lot of what coaching is about identifying thought patterns, identifying places where we get stuck, and trying to identify and work through those barriers in our own lives, our mindset, the way we think, how we approach things, how we solve problems. And that is where the practice is incredibly valuable. So if you are a new change leader, this is your first time doing it, you're like, what the heck is going on? And it's not something that you've done before. If you're struggling with connecting with the people that you're leading, what I would suggest is find a coach, find somebody to work with to help challenge yourself, to help get you out of your comfort zone, because you are already out of your comfort zone, but you are going to spend a lot of time there. It is intense. Change is all about being uncomfortable. So you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and highly recommend it as a way to delve into your own resistance, fear, emotional responses, and to hopefully become an incredibly impactful, an incredibly connected, effective, and successful change leader. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, I invite you to like, share, rate, and subscribe because it helps others find us. Change Course is brought to you by Charthouse Advisory Services and ConnectedChange.com. Our music is Levity by Emily Clausen. Show notes have moved. We're now at ConnectedChange.com. So visit us there under the Change Course podcast page, and you'll find a list of all the resources that I've mentioned here today. While you're visiting us, sign up for the Change Navigator newsletter. You'll keep on top of all things change, and every month we are sharing exclusive content and resources only with our subscribers. So don't miss out. Sign up at ConnectedChange.com. Thank you for listening, and remember, it's never too late to change course.